For a specific muscle development in my horse, I need on the one hand a structured training with breaks, and on the other hand a good nutrition with high quality proteins as well as amino acids. The body needs muscles for all sorts of work, whether it is movement, the heartbeat, for the transport of blood or nutrients inside the body. For all this, the body needs muscles. That means that without muscles, no living being would exist. Horses have approximately 520 muscles, and around 40% of a horse's body mass consists of muscles. And that shows how important muscles are for living beings and horses. The number of muscles, as well as the number of muscle bundles and muscle fibers, are genetically defined. So that is something I cannot change. But I can, of course, increase their growth with good training, but also with the feed. Muscles require amino acids to be able to grow. Amino acids are components of proteins. Muscles need these particular amino acids to be able to perform tasks and to grow. The proteins are ingested via feedstuff, and these proteins contain the amino acids that are linked with each other. During the digestive process, these chains are broken up and the individual amino acids are laid open, so to say. Then, these individual amino acids can be transported to the different locations via the blood vessels, where they can then perform their tasks. It is of the utmost importance that a horse is provided with the essential amino acids in its feed, because the body is not able to produce the essential amino acids itself. The non-essential ones a body can synthesize itself. As a reference value, you can say that a horse needs 0.5 to 1 gram of protein per kilogram body mass. That means that for a horse weighing 600 kilograms, requires between 300 and 600 grams per day. Amino acids have two functions in the muscles. First, they act as signal transmitters and say, energy is required here, and components are required here. And second, they themselves are components that enable the muscle to grow. When I train my horse, when I work with it, then the muscle works. That means that in the deep muscle tissue, actin and myosin cause the muscle to contract, but also to relax. If I increase the intensity, so if I train more, then the coenzymes, the signal transmitters, say more energy is required here. We simply need more power here to perform our tasks. And in a second step, they also say, if we have to work that much, we also need more cells that can metabolize this energy and thus create more cells. That means that if I train more, then on the one hand, more energy is transported into the muscle by the amino acids. But at the same time, there is a signal to indicate that more mass is required to handle more work, and that is why amino acids are required here. Amino acids can actually be found in, well, every feed that a horse gets. If you look at hay, depending on when the hay was cut, between 20 and 74% of the amino acids can actually be metabolized. That depends on the time they need to pass through the intestines and on how well the single amino acids can be broken out of the long chains. The protein is actually more easily accessible in young grass or early cut hay because the stalk is not yet lignified and there is no need for many digestive process steps in advance to break down these lignified structures, but the proteins is still immediately accessible. Of course, a muscle that has to work will first put the energy where it is required to be able to perform these tasks. And then, in a rest period, it will use the time to produce more cells and have more capacity in the next training session. That means that a break is equally important as the physical work itself. If I train a lot and increase the training intensity too fast, then it will again not be effective because this will create over-acidification that will lead to muscle loss rather than to muscle development. It is also important that I feed protein during the rest period because that is when the cells are built and the amino acids are needed. If I am in a period of muscle development, then I really have to ensure a continuous supply of amino acids. We have also received the question if anabolic steroids that are known to be used in the human sector can be applied to horses in order to speed up the muscle development. That is possible, but of course, absolutely falls under doping. And you have to know that this kind of muscle simply cannot develop strength. It cannot perform, and it makes absolutely no sense for a sport horse. There are different sources for proteins when it comes to feed. Soy is well known, but also brewer's yeast, linseed, alfalfa contains proteins and amino acids. Especially in soy, the ratio of the different amino acids is close to what we think is optimal for a horse. That is why soy is widely used in feed for sport horses. But proteins and amino acids can also be found in hay and grass. Usually, putting a horse in a pasture is not enough to cover a horse's need for protein. That always depends on the composition of the grasses, but it is usually safe to assume that it does not cover the need for proteins. That means that especially for a sport horse, a supplementation of proteins is necessary, either only by energy feed or in periods of muscle development, also by feeding a specific supplement. If I want to build muscles but do not supply the horse with enough proteins, then I can train as much as I want. The muscle mass will only increase in a very limited range. The effect is the same the other way around. If I only feed protein but do not train, the muscle will not be able to grow either. It really is the correlation of targeted training and the supply of enough protein and amino acids in order to have an effective muscle development, and most important, long-lasting muscle development. For muscle development, there are 4 essential tips that I want to present to you. First, you should have as much variation as possible in your training to offer as many different stimuli as possible to the muscles. Second, forage also plays a very important role. Ideally, you should have your forage analysed to determine its nutritional values and then adapt your energy feed accordingly. Third, you should absolutely make sure that you supply enough protein to your horse with the energy feed. Especially if you don't have enough protein in your forage, you can easily replenish them with a supplement. Fourth, be patient. Muscle development does not happen overnight, and you should allow for at least 8 to 12 weeks to see first results.